Why do I have a sinking feeling that I will never pronounce the name of this show correctly? Alright, get the counter started. Relic Armor Legacium was released on November 28th, 1987 on video cassette, which will account for any sort of wibbliness you may see in the footage. Transfers between mediums don't go to plan every time, especially between analog and digital. That happens more often than you might think when you're working with the kind of material I do. I'll tell you that for free. At any rate, the 50-minute OVA is the kind of thing that you definitely think someone was going to make into a series if they got the funding, but sadly the brainchild of Hiroyuki Kitazume didn't seem to progress much farther than this. Kitazume, incidentally, is a big-time animation director for big-time mecha shows, but he may not really be a director. We'll have to see. This was his baby, though, through and through. He was animation director, original creator, overall director, and mecha designer, so he had his hands full on this production. Though the fact that the lead actress only has this to her credit does raise some questions. But hey, sometimes you know a gal. So without any preamble, we're thrust into the world of Legicanum, where some sort of bug-eyed robots are spying on a farmhouse in an idyllic pastoral setting. Then the intro plays. The planet Libertia has 3 large mirrors floating in orbit that are making it possible to sustain life on this planet. Apparently they elected to ignore the Goldilocks zone in this system and say, fuck it, land here. A boy and a girl are sitting in the shade next to a sci-fi combine harvester and enjoying a somewhat overlong etude when their friend, wrangling chickens poorly, tells them to get their asses in gear. This girl, Dorothy, looks a little overmuch like Elviano, but that's because Kitazume was the character designer on Gundam Double Zeta. You'll get used to it, promise. Alcia, our main character, pops open the busted tractor and sorts it out instantly. Not even the guild's workers could fix it that fast, according to Blick, the young boy. Alcia has some sort of machine affinity, which she learned from her granddad. Grandpappy here is working on a mech of some stripe, which also requires his granddaughter to strip to stuff herself into this high-maintenance Madox. Remember Madox? Similar concept. This is a particularly small and very purple mecha, and it's so small that the machine's arms and legs are controlled by the pilot's own in armored cuffs behind the front plating. It's not a design concept you see terribly often, mainly because it's less strain on the animation budget to make them single limbs. But it is visually interesting, even if this thing does look like a retooled Dunbean. But before they get to testing, the lab is destroyed by one of the guild armors. Try as Alcia might, the guild mecha are about 3 times as big as the Lyric Cornum, and Grandpa gets rocked. She makes a less than graceful exit before the guild backup armors bounce her off the ground like it's kickball season. You know, you don't really get to see mecha size discrepancies like this in real robot shows. If it wasn't so horrifically dangerous, it'd be comical. But Lorna Kynum's thrusters are just as powerful as anyone else's, and it manages to escape. Until the power runs out and it drops like a rock, immediately reducing Alcia to a greasy red smear in her cockpit, because no amount of sci-fi bullshit will save you from getting pulverized from a falling mech that small. Just kidding, she's fine. The guild armors regroup, running low on power, while the Legacy Modern Standard Vintage wanders the forest, before taking a tumble off a cliff near Blake and Dorothy's house. Back in the city, full of what amounts to togas and crystal towers, a woman of some authority named Fermis Reek berates Dart's Ira for his failure to capture their target. Oh wow, did Tamino work on this? The state of your names, woof. But apparently people in this city are being overworked by the ruling classes, which tells us just where in the timeline of capitalism this show takes place.
Eat the rich!
Blick and Dorothy bluff and guilt their way past a highway crossing in a scene that takes far too long and ends up being far less funny than they were thinking it would. They end up getting chased by the cops anyway, which leads to Zeno Mozesti getting involved to bail them out. Well, geez, no one's using it. Why are they so bent out of shape about using the guild's highways? I mean, other than the contraband mecha they've got in the back of their truck, I suppose. Zeno's a mech pilot too, by the by, and his mecha looks pretty similar to the Lagiacrum, except it's painted up like Yune's Yagdoga instead of the Dunbean.
Oh, you can pronounce that just fine?
They give the cops the slip and drop it off at a junkyard, which is frankly the first place I'd go looking for rogue mecha. Finally, Alcia is free from her mech, and she wants to go home to search for her grandpappy. Yeah, great idea, Chica. Why don't you go back to the place where everybody thinks you're gonna go anyway, and totally not get captured? Saharo, Zeno's buddy, goes to check on him instead, but gets caught by the guild, because of course he would. While making his escape, he sees that Professor Grace, Alcia's granddad, is being held in an infirmary by Reek and huffs it back to Zeno. Also, in the middle of this exposition, surprise Megumi Hayashibara as the nurse. Megumi never turns down a paycheck Hayashibara, I suppose.
Here comes the money!
Here we go. Money talk.
Reek is going to destroy the tower when the heat wave hits, but we don't rightly know what the tower is. Given that this guild is basically the idiotic ruling class and the tower is putting out some sort of high-frequency vibration that's affecting the lower classes, the problem is, of course, being ignored. If you think this is all very poorly explained, you're entirely correct, because I honestly don't have any idea what it's doing other than Reek wants to blow up the tower, and that's a bad thing? A good thing? 5 years ago, everyone's dads went off and got themselves killed researching the tower. And it seems like a pretty obvious this needs to go problem. And no, I'm not kidding, almost every named character's father went on this failed expedition. Halfway through, it's time for the rescue mission. But Alcia's gone full Amuro and doesn't want to pilot the Legum County. Zeno goes it alone to make a distraction, while everyone else goes to rescue Professor Exposition. Miraculously, it succeeds without a hitch and leaves a lot of wrecked robots in its wake. Turns out that the Leggy Cannot is designed for female pilots, which probably seemed wild back in 1987, but nowadays is weirdly gendered. Reek decides to kill power to the guild center to flush out our heroes, which Darts protests, saying that the council would make them third-class citizens if that happens. Trust me, pal, you get used to it faster than you'd think. The problem here is that there's no real explanation of what that means particularly, but you could probably guess. Anyway, this sonic vibration put out by the tower is making people unhinged, apparently. We never see it, but I guess if you can just say it's happening, then it's a problem. The power outage does work to flush out Zeno and Alcia, and then they set a trap for them with some sort of giant laser. Darts and Zeno have some sort of history, and they're going to settle it right now, right after that laser fires. Oh no, the laser is causing video distortion as well as an explosion. What a cruel and inhumane weapon. Darts squares off with Zeno using a laser chainsword, and Alcia gets her beat down on with her own beam sabers. Yeah, not bad for somebody who was terrified to even get in the thing about 10 minutes ago. From here on out, it's more smash and bash 'em, which is never really a miss, but it's not terribly interesting to talk about. Alcia makes a save when Zeno is down, and then Zeno makes a save when Alcia is down, and they take out Darts without much work. And with that, our heroes make their escape to go towards this mysterious tower. Roll credits, play a song. Ironically enough, See You Again rolls up at the end of the show. Well, ain't that a kick in the teeth? At any rate, this sure was a thing. The biggest problem with OVAs like this one is that they go nowhere, and there's no satisfying conclusion on the way because production stalled out. That's sort of the great tragedy of OVAs from this time period, because for the most part, they're designed to say, hey, you want to give us more money to finish this story? More often than not, they did not get more money to finish the story. You know which ones just had the bottom drop out of them and which ones had relative success by sheer episode count. The character and mech designs are fairly standard for the time, and it's clear that there's more information that was waiting for us in the wings, but just didn't grab anyone's interest in the way it was expecting. So while I can't really bust on it for having one-dimensional characters at this juncture and following pretty standard tropes at this juncture, it's just sort of extant. I definitely watched it. I definitely can see that things happened. But aside from going back over this with a fine-tooth comb again, I don't think I'll really remember what happens in it in about a week's time. Alas, the information on this one is so very light that nothing short of cornering Kitazume in a dark alley and pumping him for info will get any proper resolution to this story. So I guess Relic Armor, Legum Mega,
Nope.
Lego Cheerios,
Try again.
Lego Chimichangas,
One more time.
Legacium.
Finally.
Sheesh. Legacium is an interesting aside, with not much to its name, but you can get cells from it for a reasonable price on eBay if you're the sort to collect such a thing. Not available in North America currently unless you have some sort of back channel or know a guy. It's perfectly serviceable if you're an aficionado of 80s OVAs, but it lacks staying power. There's nothing wrong with it, but as it stands, it's just another unfinished work in a sea of OVAs. It's not bad, but it is a little bit tragic. That being said, this is Professor Otaku, the greatest American anime critic, signing off.